Right now we're in the process of installing camshaft bearings in a small block Ford 302. Came out of a 1989 Ford F-150. And generally I like to cover things where you might experience a problem, maybe show some stuff out of service manuals for torquing and sequences and stuff like that. But typically there's enough videos out there to be found to walk you through every nut and bolt of different installations, where I try to cover some hiccups that you might come across the way. So yeah, today this is our camshaft. We went with the brand new one. We had two used ones, and they were just too worn on the lobes. The bearing journals were okay, but there was a lot of concern in the wear on the noses, and then also by taking the measurements, they were just out of spec. So we ended up with a brand new one. It's a little bit of an upgrade from stock. It's a Melling. Came with a cam card with break-in instructions, what type of oils to use. We are using a flat tappet, which those are soaking, and the air's already been purged. Those soaked overnight. So as soon as we're ready to install those, we can. All right, so instead of getting the $250 to $300 camshaft bearing installation tool, I found this trick on YouTube. I saw two guys use it. I found that I had to use a 3/4 inch drive, and the socket goes in and out of there just fine on the ratchet. This one happens to be either a 13 millimeter or a 1/2 inch on this expansion plug that was about $6 at Napa. It's a 2-inch to 2 1/8 inch expansion plug. And I had to break it in a little bit. For bearing number 5, which goes in first, I had a problem with it. And also for number 1, which is the smallest, in order for this to get a good hold onto that number 1 bearing, I had to get this in a vise and tighten it up real good. And it seems like ever since I've done that, I haven't had a problem yet, but I have yet to do number 1. On number 1, I wanted to show you that there's 2 slots, 2 oil hole slots. It's gonna sit in there like that. I haven't marked this one out yet, but when I just realized, wait a minute, there's 2 slots on here, what's going on? You could feel one here on the side, and then as you come up at 12 o'clock, just like the rest, there's another one. So that's why we have 2 slots in the 302 block on the bearings. And so what I've been doing is I clean out my hole, and then I clean out with brake cleaner inside there real good. And then I'll go ahead and mark with the Sharpie. I had to do 2 lines on this one, if we're able to see them. Yeah, not very good. But anyway, I have a Sharpie line up there. It's the one on the left that I'm after. My first one was a little bit off to the right. And then I mark the center of this slot. So I'll line up those Sharpie lines. And what you want to do with this, the other thing that I've noticed about this, especially going into 4 and 5, is that you want to put your first 3 bearings on loosely. Get it in there, set it up, line it up, get it in there best you can, then tighten down on the nut on the expansion plug to hold the bearing, then drive it in. I tried on number 5 to have this tightened already, and it gave me a little bit of problems till I realized let me back off on that a little bit. So I backed off on it, got it lined up, then tightened on the nut inside the plug, and it went right in. It did great. So the other thing I had to do on the expansion plug, in order to get through number 4 to install 5, I had to grind this. So I used a really smooth, I didn't want any rough edges going through here, scratching any surfaces. So so I took a sanding disc. I think it might be, I think it's an 80 grit. They only come in certain grits for the grinder, but it is smooth. I had to smoothen that out to get through 4. Otherwise it was getting hung up. Even with it loose, this part of the expansion plug was getting caught up in there. So if you go this route, that's something that you might have to do as well. I didn't have very much room to do my tack welding, but it was enough to get that socket on there, enough to do this job. So if you want to go with a 1/2-inch drive, you're gonna have to do something different with the socket than what I did, but it would allow you to get some more weld on there. It didn't burn any of the rubber. I think what we're seeing there is just wear from some installation. So this method works great. Of course, with any little trick other than the actual tool, it's got its little other hiccups that you'll just have to get used to with different size ratchets. Extensions. I had to get the reducer to give me 1/2-inch for the majority of extensions that I have. My majority I have are in the 1/2-inch drive. So this is an option, and it's working out very well so far. You want your bearings flush, and you can see down these holes that they're just a hair off center. Each and every single one of them are just a hair off center, but they're in there flush. And that's what we want. We want them to be flush, no overlap. And we want to make sure that the slots are lined up. For some reason, that one's a little dark right now. Must have a shadow. So we can see all the way through to the bottom of the bearing there, through the slot. If for some reason those holes, those oil hole slots do not match up, you probably could drill them out just a little bit, drill those slots out a little bit in a couple of places to line up. But if you have to do that, you really might as well get another set of bearings. These are Durabond, and they seem to be doing fine. They tell you the positions. 1 is in the front, 5 is in the back. So you start with 5 and work your way to 1 as you go through. All right, well, that's it for the cam bearing installations, and we'll see what's next.